Ladies and gentlemen, we need to talk about a very important topic, namely that of gender-based violence. Why gender-based violence? Well, for those of you who were watching the news during the Christmas period, you would have noticed that there were a couple events that basically hit the news. The first one was around a man who killed his girlfriend and their 3-year-old son and then hung himself. A few days later, another man on social media killed his girlfriend and appeared online with a bloodied hand, basically saying that he had killed her for reasons. Now, in response, there was the usual, gender-based violence activism, which the ANC generally tends to pursue at times when this type of thing crops up. So, who actually led the calls of charges to say, basically, this shouldn't be happening? Well, it was Mbalula. And Mbalula said, "Men, you don't own women." And it basically was a speech whereby he said that men were basically abusing women as if they were their property. This was then followed up by the Premier, who basically said that we should basically have a campaign which says, "Not in my name," which gives an attitude against gender-based violence. There's a few things that actually I really want to talk about this, because for those of you who did not notice during the Christmas break, there was also a video circulating on social media of an individual who owned a retreat and was stabbed multiple times by asking a black patron to please don't smoke hubbly-bubbly on the premises, and as a result, violence ensued and the individual was stabbed repeatedly. This individual has been in intensive care and obviously everybody took note of it. We've also seen other instances in the news over the Christmas period that, is the usual kind of like societal points of disintegration, which we generally tend to see around Christmas. It's kind of like news is slow, so the news generally tends to foster any kind of outrage type clickbait that it can. But there is actually a larger issue at play, and it's an issue that we do need to talk about. So let's actually start off at the top, and that is Mbalula's suggestion that men don't own women. What it basically says is that men need to take responsibility for the killing of a woman, because it's all men and we're conducting atrocious behavior towards women. Now, I do have to ask, what does the Torah actually says in Deuteronomy? That parents shall not be put to death for children, nor children be put to death for parents. A person shall be put to death for their own crimes. In other words, this all underscores the principle of individual accountability for their actions. Now, in my personal opinion, the reason we have all of these events is that there has ceased to be individual accountability for moral actions. Now, for those of you who know, moral actions used to be the cornerstone of any society. But there has been this move, this progressive move towards a degree of Marxism whereby we no longer judge an individual, but we judge a collective. The collective are what's obviously responsible for the actions of the individual. There is no individual accountability. Now, we see this repeatedly in the idea that white individuals in South Africa are somehow responsible for all the sins of their forefathers. So, go back to Europe. We see this repeatedly in the whole argument of the repressed and the repressor. Obviously, the repressed being anybody from either a female or an ethnic minority or ethnic majority if you live in South Africa, and the repressor being obviously the undesirable individual, whether it be the patriarchy, whether it be white privilege. And the individuals, basically everybody who fits into that paradigm is basically responsible for the sins of the past. Now, this allows individuals to escape accountability because you can say, well, it wasn't me, Gov. It was actually part of the collective. It's just, it's all of us. We're all responsible. So when Mbalula says that, we should actually individually take responsibility for this whole thing that all men are doing, I think that's a big generalization, buddy. And no, I am not going to take responsibility for the actions of other men. So now we actually have to consider why individuals or why these men feel that they can do the general actions that they do. And this is where the conversation really becomes important. And the first is, let us look at the political discourse in South Africa. It is not uncommon for songs to call for the killing of others. It is not uncommon to sing songs about bring me my machine gun. It is not uncommon to talk of revolutionary action, being violent, killing in the name of. When your general discourse encourages forms of violence, do not be surprised when the individual's first response to an action is violence. So now you have to ask yourself the question, violence of what? Well, we frequently see that many of these individuals are in very precarious positions. They may be from very disadvantaged backgrounds. There may be a general feeling of hopelessness. There may be forms of substance abuse. There may be parts that the individual finds that are undesirable about the life that they lead. And as a result, they have to ask themselves questions of how to get out of that life. How do they reform their life so they can make it a little bit more tolerable? Well, when the general political discourse is, it stands to reason that many of these individuals would resort to violent actions in order to solve their problems. Have a problem with your girlfriend? That's fine. Beat her up and kill her. If you want to stop this behavior, asking men to be accountable is not the right way. You need to start off at the root to the issue, and that is your very language, the thing that is the most common to you every day, the way you speak and the way you conduct yourself needs to change. You cannot use this type of language in political discourse. Now, a lot of the political parties would find that undesirable because obviously they like to use violent language. But remember, if the base default of the person who sees an undesirable situation is primarily violent, then the net result is going to be, well, violent. So it should be no surprise. So if Mbalula really wants to hold somebody accountable, what he should be doing is holding the very politicians who use violent rhetoric in the first place accountable. The question then should become, should you and your political buddies, the EFF or even the MK party, be using rhetoric and language that involves violent discord? And the answer should be, obviously, well, no. You see, you can't hold others accountable and say that they must somehow group collectively be responsible for the actions of gender-based violence, but you yourself perpetrate it in the mere political speech that you use in order to campaign to get votes. It's not how it works. You can't hold others as a group accountable for actions that you individually are responsible for. So I would say to Mr. Mbalula, it's a noticeable goal to not want to see gender-based violence. I agree. Violence is not the right answer. It is not the first discord for anybody. But then again, I don't burn down click stores, and I certainly don't go around beating up shop owners because I feel that they didn't give them a fair wage increase. You see, that discord isn't in my political language, which means that when I get to the home environment, surely being violent with my partner is abhorrent to me. I can't think of how this would be tolerated by individuals because it is not my base default. And so if the ANC really wants to push for a gender-based violence-free country where we don't have gender-based violence, then it really needs to change its political discord and stop using revolutionary, violent, and forms of aggressive rhetoric when it comes through to campaigning. But that's just my opinion. You can let me know what you think in the comments below. Until next time, bye.